I just want to say for all the guys in Vietnam that we're doing our best. It's not an easy situation. But the boys' morale over there is real high. And you can feel confident that we are going to win that war.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 89 of the Backlash 605 podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman.
I'm Brian Mensing.
Brian.
What's up?
What's up? What have you been watching lately? Let's start there. Since we're doing a movie podcast here, what you been watching lately, Brian?
What have I been watching lately? Are we talking TV? Are we talking movies? We're probably talking movies, aren't we?
Probably talking movies since it's a movie podcast.
Hey, one of the things I was watching, though, is a TV series that does have a movie. I've been picking up on Black Mirror again. But I went through a little bit of a stint of the 80s fantasy films. It started off when I picked up the Criterion Collection edition of The Princess Bride, and I thought, hey, you know what? Let's just keep on going. And Labyrinth and Willow and The Return to Oz. Might have been one more else in there. Never-ending Story.
Maybe hinting at something we're going to do down the road?
Maybe.
Yeah. I've been watching some recent stuff. I'll stick to that. I watched The Lodge, which came out earlier this year. Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn horror movie. I often heard it compared to Hereditary. If you thought Hereditary was slow, oh boy, do I have a movie for you. It's on Hulu right now. I don't think it was a Hulu original, but they picked it up. It's a Neon film, so
which makes total sense.
Went to Hulu pretty fast. I don't recommend it. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I don't recommend. It wasn't a bad movie. It has some good atmosphere. It's beautifully shot. It looks like it's a dollhouse almost, which is a plot device in the movie. But it's a little too slow. And then the other one I watched, I don't know if you watched this yet. Have you watched Palm Springs?
I was just about to say, speaking of Hulu, I did watch Palm Springs here this last weekend, and I would honestly have to say there's the humor. When you think of Andy Samberg, you automatically think comedian and whatnot, and he, as much as there might be stuff about his that I don't like, I think he is generally a very smart comedic actor.
There's stuff you don't like?
Well, anyway. But this
I just say that as legitimately I can't think of anything I don't like of his.
Right. But I would say it's for the fact that there is the dramatic element to this film. I think he completely crushed it. This is a fantastic film.
Yeah, and
it's also a very interesting turn to the Groundhog Day type of scenario.
It is. It's one of my favorites of the year. I think this and Invisible Man are 1 and 2 right now. This is a great little movie. Streamlined 90-minute comedy. Has a ton of heart. Samberg is great in it. So it is Christina Milioti is how you pronounce it. The mom from How I Met Your Mother. Further proves that show did not know how to use her because she is fantastic in this movie.
Correct. I know. I was trying to get for the little bit that she is in How I Met Your Mother and the little bit that she's in The Wolf of Wall Street, I was still trying to get accustomed to the fact that, my God, she knows how to swear well.
Yeah. And speaking of someone who knows how to swear well, J.K. Simmons in this movie.
That's what I was going to say. Is J.K.
The
Simmons,
best part.
Yes. Even to the point where we get the epiphany, the look on his face when we get to the very end was just magical.
Yes,
without giving anything away.
I love this movie. This is one of my favorites of the year. Highly, highly, highly recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I would completely agree tenfold.
All right, so let's get into the main show then, Brian, because that was a little segue. We should probably just do that in the beginning of the show from now on.
Hey, why not?
Just a quick, what have you been watching lately? But episode...
Because it's what we want to do, because it's, our our show.
It's our show. We can do what we want to do. No one can tell us what we
We're
can't and can't do.
we're the directors, we're the producers, we're the writers, we're the actors. We are the whole shebang.
We are the Oliver Stones of this episode, if you will, because this week's topic is the movie Born on the 4th of July, as we continue our Patriotic Films miniseries, our America miniseries.
America.
We've taken a turn this time. We started with the Patriots. We did Red Dawn. Now we're heading to Nam to take on the Vietnam War. So this is the topic of the week again. Born on the 4th of July. So we'll be talking about that a little later on. Before we get to that, let's jump to the news, Brian. So what do we got that is new in the world of film and entertainment for this week?
Well, the first thing right off the bat, because I just want to get this guy out of the way, because this comes up every 3 days, it seems like here. Warner Brothers has pulled Tenet from its current release schedule as of today, as of the day we are recording this Monday, meaning that it hasn't been pushed back to a certain date like they had been doing the last couple of times. Not
Just
like
pushing
Mulan.
it back every 2 weeks.
Yep, it does not currently have a date right now, which definitely shows, it sounds like Warner Brothers is working on its way to be able to make things happen, but in terms of the release of films, I don't think they know what to do yet. And so as opposed to just keep pushing it back a couple weeks, pushing it back a couple weeks, they're just gonna be like, hey, we're taking it off the schedule, which I think is huge for Warner Brothers.
Yeah, this has been, like you said, in the news for weeks and weeks and weeks, that Tenet has been pushed back 2 weeks. It's been pushed back, and now finally we get what they should have done months ago now, is
Right.
just said, we don't know when this movie is going to come out. We're going to wait and see what the landscape is going to look like down the road when theaters can finally open up and be a safe place for people to attend the movies again. I get why they kept pushing it back 2 weeks, maybe something miraculous would happen. Yeah,
exactly. The hopes and dreams, but
And
we're also living in a very different, in an unprecedented time, as the words have been used over and over for the last 9 months.
And the running joke has been Christopher Nolan wants to be the savior of cinema. And with this, I've heard conflicting reports. I've heard it's been Warner Brothers because this and Wonder Woman are two of the biggest movies they were going to release this year. Wonder Woman, they pushed back, I believe, November is when that's supposed to be coming out.
Which at this point right now, I don't even think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be in the theaters this year for any new movies like this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that Tenet does not have a release date tells me that Warner Brothers isn't confident on anything right now for release dates, and they just haven't told us that Wonder Woman's been pulled.
Yeah, my final thought on it is they should have done this months ago, and we'll wait to see what happens, because right now theaters aren't even open. I mean, they're open here in South Dakota, but we have a few of them open, but none of them are getting new releases.
Well, and everything that's open are more of your independent mom and pop type things, whatever, because our two biggest ones here in Sioux Falls are closed down solid.
Yes, and I don't know when those are going to open. They were supposed to open here in August, end of July, something like that.
End of July.
I still don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see.
Now that you make mention of that, I need to go back and check out the $5 movies they were talking about, because I haven't heard anything since then. But moving on.
Let's move on.
Moving on up or down. This one's right up your alley, Casey. One that I know that you're looking forward to is the Train to Busan sequel, Peninsula. Has been released worldwide, and at least opened where it can open for in the times that we're talking about here, and actually did a pretty good $20 million opening this last weekend here, which, I mean, if you consider what we're looking at here, that's pretty. 20 million right now, I think, is phenomenal. That's like Avenger numbers, to be honest. If you were considering how many people are actually able to get to the theater.
Yeah, I think this is the reason I put it in the notes for this week, and I wanted to talk about it because this is pretty big news. I mean, we've been looking. If you look at some of the box office numbers from the last 3-4 months,
Hmm.
it's been like it's been all the re-releases that have been coming. Like last week, I believe Empire Strikes Back was the number one movie at the box office.
Yeah, and we're not even talking like $1 million. We're
No, it
talking
was, I
like
think,
500 grand.
yeah, something. It was less than $500,000 or something. And now to see something, above the $1 million mark is pretty exciting to see. And other
Hmm.
countries got to have this. They're in different situations than we are here in the U.S. And
And the producers of this film are taking the opportunity. We're not in the situation for it to be able to be here, but hey, take the opportunity where you can, because this is an international film.
mhm. Yeah, and I don't think, unlike other bigger films, I don't think they're too worried about like piracy or anything like that, because this is like has a scheduled streaming date already for later this year, where it
Hmm.
hits VOD and it's going to Shudder as well. So it only makes sense to hit what theaters you can. $20 million is a big hit for this movie. It's a big get for them. So I'm
Oh, and
excited to see that people are excited to go out to the movies again worldwide.
well, and even $20 million, you can't tell me that it didn't make its budget back.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
It was made off of a cup of noodles and 25 cents.
Well, I mean, I don't even want to guess. I would say 10 million right in there is probably
Oh
the
yeah,
budget for it.
but I mean, even when it hits streaming services in the United States, it'll probably make its budget back
Oh
just
yeah,
based off its streaming deal.
yeah, it's gonna
Uh,
it's gonna be just fine. Hopefully, this means we're gonna continue with the Train to Busan universe and get a third film and other spin-offs as well.
Bump on, you'll be front and center right for that.
Oh my! Have you watched Train to Busan?
It's on my list.
God, it's
You
incredible.
get you guys keep talking about it, and then I'm like, yep, I need to put that on there, and then something comes up, and then it just keeps getting.
Easily top 2 or 3 zombie movie ever. Yeah,
Wow.
it's great.
Well, I'm gonna have to try to watch it before we eventually get the Eternals anyway, because the guy from Train to Busan is in the Eternals, so
And
I
he's
gotta have.
great. He's great in Train to Busan.
Yeah. So, all right, moving on. Another little poke at Casey's heart here, and I
Oh
don't know,
no.
how you're gonna take this and whatnot. The Grease prequel, Summer Loving, has continued to move forward and to gain steam, and has currently found its director in Brett Haley of what Hearts Beat Loud,
Yes. Which was
and
a critical darling a few years ago. Nick Offerman led film centered around music. So I mean, oh god, let's just jump into this. I don't like the idea of this movie, but I've heard
there's
nothing. I've heard
there's
nothing but great things about Hearts Beat Loud. I have not watched it yet, but I mean, if you get a guy who already has the music centric films in his filmography, maybe he's the right guy. But still,
right.
I would assume. I'm not assuming. I guarantee. I know this is the plot of the movie is the summer before they go back to school, and how Danny and Sandy, played by who knows in this one, but
Right.
John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Just de-age them, please.
That's what
Um,
you beat me to it. It was like, let's just get the de-agers out and
yeah,
just cast the same people.
I would
Uh,
assume it's going to be a musical. Still, I mean, are we
my
setting this in the Grease 2 universe as well? I don't
see
know.
that's just it. It's I mean, all the studios are always trying to find those IPs and those different films and franchises and tentpoles, everything like that, where that we can try to tug at nostalgia and figure out ways that we can try to get butts in the seats without having to think too hard about it. And I get why they're going for Grease, because it is a beloved film, and like you said, we've already had our Grease too, so let's go to before it happened. And you're probably right, it's going to be the summer, hence the Summer Lovin'.
Yeah,
And for me, it's the why. I don't even care if this guy the guy that they've got set to direct, or it's in his wheelhouse, because like you said, he's done musical film before. Even if you got top notch actors and whatnot, I still have my question of why. Like, why do we need this?
we don't, but they can make money off it, like you said. My biggest thing with this is, honestly, if someone pitched this to me as you can watch either this or that, being the prequel to Grease, which would be a prequel to the Olivia Newton-John, John Travolta movie, or a straight up remake of Grease, I would take the remake. Because in that case, I'm not going to be looking at the actors as, well, within 3 weeks of this, you're John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Like, if like, that's where I bring up the de-aging thing, because in this case, I'm like, go for it. I think they would both be up for it, John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. I mean, just, I don't know, go for it. Or if I was them, I would pitch
Just stitch their face onto a 20-something-year-old.
Yeah, and then get Nick Cage in it, and we'll do a face-off prequel too.
Oh my god.
I would honestly take a, you couldn't call it Grease 2, but call it Grease
Lightning.
Grease Lightning. I don't care. Yeah, but set it 40 years from now. What are all these people doing? They're at their 40-year high school reunion or something like that, and it'd at least be something different.
But doesn't it at the end of Grease tell you where they ended up? Like,
Yeah.
it has the whole montage thing.
Well, they all die and they drive off into a car into heaven. Yes. So technically, if you wanted to do a sequel, it'd be set in heaven. Yeah. I don't know what I think of this, honestly. I
guess I'm gonna have to see the first trailer, but until then, I file it under.
Yeah.
Why are we here?
Casting will be the biggest thing for me, and I don't know. I don't know who you would cast.
We'll get Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling.
You might have me then.
All right, moving on. Again, this is also one of those ones I'm not sure, but at least this one I can get behind more than I can get behind Summer Lovin', and that is John Hamm. We have it in here as is going to be. I haven't heard confirmation, just that he was in talks to be Fletch in a reboot directed by Greg Malata of Superbad. So I'm on the fence, because I do think that John Hamm just has not been provided the comedic driven film that I know he's capable of, and maybe this will be it. But at the same time too, Fletch is also one of those ones where Chevy Chase is Fletch, and I don't know if I could picture anybody else as Fletch. It's not like they've never tried to do Fletch again and whatnot, and just be like, just maybe. So I don't know about this one yet. I'm one of those people that's kind of on the fence, not as much of a fan of Superbad as other people are. So I don't know how this chemistry is going to mesh together. Thoughts?
I have an honest question with this news.
Okay.
I have no problem with the director. I love Superbad is one of my favorite comedies ever. I love John Hamm. You know he can pull off the comedy. Like some of the ones we brought up in our group chat when we saw this news was Bridesmaids, him on SNL. Like, he has the chops to do it. I'm not worried about that.
He just hasn't had the right vehicle, like I said.
Like a lead vehicle.
Right.
But with this, the question I have is Fletch a IP that they really think is bankable in 2020? I have not ever watched Fletch. I know of Fletch because I know Chevy Chase. I've never seen the movie, but the only time I ever hear anyone talk about Fletch is the countless times they've talked about a reboot with, Ryan Reynolds was in talks for it. I think Jason Sudeikis might have been too at some point. And now this here, I have not heard anyone talk about Fletch in the zeitgeist of film. This is, not one of those movies people talk about. Is it a bankable property, you think?
Maybe. It might be one of those ones that they got to just dust the cobweb, and then they have to find the right person to lead that to a box office success, and if there's creative differences, because like you said, if Ryan Reynolds was at one point, tied to it and whatnot, he's very, it's very well known that he takes his projects with a lot of passion. And if he didn't feel that he was going to be right because of the direction they wanted to take and whatnot, I could see why that did not work and whatnot. I can't say much for Jason Sudeikis and whatnot. So, maybe it's just a matter of just finding that right mold, if you will. And who knows, maybe we end up with a fantastic film, or maybe we end up with a new Bewitched.
Yikes.
And I'm hoping we're going to hoping to get a good, a good Fletch, something that will allow him to be able to have multiple sequels and to have him be the box office draw.
Yeah, this leads me to wonder if this film, because just going off of who's in it and what the IP is, this seems like it might end up being like, i- if it does hit theaters, it may not hit, but when it hits home streaming, then people are going to be checking it out. It seems very much like a home streaming movie.
Yeah, could be. Could be. I could see that. Maybe at some point, if it does, maybe it becomes like a Netflix film, or it becomes a Hulu or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we definitely know that depending on the property or the film and whatnot. Palm Springs, as an example, went straight to streaming. The Old Guard on Netflix. There's some good, solid films that are going straight to streaming. Um, so maybe this will be that next one. Okay, so the next thing we have on the docket, which I don't know what I think about this. Comedy comes from dark places, so this is why I think this could potentially work. Ben Stiller has opted to direct Rat, which is a Stephen King short story, and just the fact that I'm using the word Stephen King and Ben Stiller in the same sentence. Like those are two names that you should never expect to hear at the same time. But again, like I said, a lot of comedy, some of your best comics, like Robin Williams, for example, come from dark places. So, who's to say that who's to say Ben Stiller doing Rat, doing Stephen King is his vehicle into the dark unknown, that like what Jordan Peele did with Get Out and Us. Maybe this is our time to be able to look at him and go, okay, you can do horror as well. We know he's done, dramas, and obviously he's a very good comedic director. So maybe this is that new vehicle into I'm using the word vehicle a lot today. Into the horror genre. Maybe this is something he's wanted to play with, and he's just trying to find the right property to do so.
I love this idea. I think Ben Stiller is such an underrated director, period, comedy or not. I mean,
Agreed. Agreed.
and you bring up
Tropic Thunder is a prime example of that.
Tropic Thunder, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Zoolander.
Zoolander 2.
One of we don't talk about that one. One of my favorites that no one seems to give love to anymore, The Cable Guy, and that's where I bring up.
Heavyweights.
He was in Heavyweights, did not direct that.
Oh, that's right.
But him doing The Cable Guy, he showed off. He had the dark comedy in that. There is also a little bit of horror elements in that, especially with Jim Carrey's character in that. And
Well, and I do think though that is a little bit of a good synergy between Stiller's directing and Jim Carrey's comedy, because again, dark comedy. If there's one thing that Jim Carrey can do, it's dark comedy. And so I do agree, though. I think Cable Guy is one of those underrated ones. But again, I think it's the synergy of those two combined is what makes that even better.
well, then let's combine him with Mr. Stephen King and see what we get out of it. I want to read off what the story is that he's taking on, because it is a short story.
Ooh, do we get Stiller doing Jim Carrey doing Stephen King? Because I would be all down for that.
I would be down for that too. Can you guess what the main character's job is for this? Give you one.
Mortician?
Give you one guess. No,
Well, I used my one guess, I guess.
you did. He's a writer, because literally every Stephen King character is a writer.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
So the story centers on a writer named Drew Larson. He's given himself over to academia because every time he tries to turn a good idea into a novel, things go seriously bad, mentally, physically, or both. But his latest concept, a Western thriller, is gangbusters, and goes out to an old family cabin in the woods to get the novel done. When storms, insecurities, and sickness hit, Drew strikes a sinister bargain with a rat that turns out to be a thought-provoking spin on the monkey's paw situation. The rat offers to get rid of his writer's block in exchange for one of Larson's loved ones to die.
Disturbing.
So Ben Stiller is in talks to also star in this movie, which I would also be all for. Yeah, I'm into this idea. I'm excited for this.
That is definitely a different take, really.
I think Ben Stiller can easily pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got the chops for it, both as an actor, both as and as a director. And I think him and King together is exciting stuff.
And I would definitely like to see that outside of it just being for the short story or whatnot, it's actually maybe having Stephen King, be on as a producer, being on to help with the story, because we're talking about when you're talking about short stories, I don't know exactly how short this one is per se, but when you're trying to flesh these out into like 90-minute films, there's more than likely going to be stuff that's going to be altered and modified, maybe even added, is to bring Stephen in because I think Steven's writing and Stiller's writing together, working together on one script, I think would be a fantastic, way to make this happen and make it better.
Yeah, I'd like to find a good balance between the two because for me, a lot of King's short stuff is just as good, if not better, than his long form storytelling. Because sometimes with his longer stuff, he just does not know when to stop. It's like just
Correct.
stop, you just end your story already. When he gets to the shorter stuff, he gets the character, gets to the point, and then ends it. Like that's where the Stephen King joke of him having bad endings kind of ends, is with his short story stuff. So to see. Yeah, I'm just excited for this movie to see where we can end up with this. This has not been confirmed in any way that this is actually put into production yet. It's just that Ben Stiller has opted the rights to this short story, and I mean, if he's doing that, he must have some passion towards this, at least a little bit.
Right. Okay. So the next thing we have, so you're good, right? You're good.
I'm good.
You're
I'm
good. You're
excited.
good. I'm excited too. I really do want to see this to come to fruition. I want to see Ben Stiller get dark and even dark, not dark comedy dark. All right. So the next thing we have here is I totally misread that at first here. Is we've got Netflix's The Gray Man to star Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling and to be directed by the Russos, with Netflix putting up what sounds to be a $200 million budget. So the fact that we've got Evans working with his pals, the Russo brothers, who obviously we know have fantastic chemistry, between director and actor. Have Ryan Gosling in there, I think, is a fantastic idea. But what this sounds like this is supposed to be is, and I believe it's based off of some books, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
But is back to basically be this to be Netflix's Bourne series. Is that and to that Jason Bourne character, to the Jack Reacher character, is going to be Ryan Gosling, not Chris Evans. It almost sounds like Chris Evans is going to be the villain to help launch this potential franchise for Netflix and whatnot. And I'm really excited to see where this goes because I think the directors, obviously, they've shown that they can what they can do, and I do think that they got two very talented front people in front of the camera to be able to knock this out.
I'm hesitantly optimistic on this because on paper, this sounds like a great idea. Teaming
Mm-hmm.
Gosling with Evans is a very exciting duo to have on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
To have the Russo brothers direct this in an espionage thriller, which they have already shown that they can do with Captain America: The Winter Soldier,
Yep.
and to have that style of action in this movie, that excites me.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm just curious of is a $200 million budget for this.
Mm-hmm.
One, how does Netflix get $200 million to do this? And two, why does it need to cost $200 million? And that's just more of a question I have. It has nothing to do, I guess, with the end game of this movie. Get the pun?
Yes, I do.
It's just, let's just make smaller movies. Lee Winnell has proved that you can make smaller budget action style movies like the Upgrade and The Invisible Man. They have less than $10 million to work with, and he's delivering some of the best of the year. In the case of Upgrade, out of that year, maybe the best action movie that year. And so that's where I'm wondering where a $200 million budget goes to. They're no strangers to working with that style of budget, obviously.
Right.
Working on the Marvel films and especially the last two Avengers movies. But I get what Netflix is trying to do here. They're now trying to they're trying to catch up with like the Marvels and the Disneys, and
I
putting
think I
putting up
think
this style of budget to create a franchise out of, and to have their own Bond or Bourne franchise or Mission Impossible franchise. This is their go at it. So I
I
give them
think
props for going for it.
I think $200 million. I think a third of that is going to talent between the directors and the two leads. Is I bet at least a third of that's going to that.
Oh, I'm sure Gosling and Evans are asking for a
Not
pretty.
hurting.
Yeah, they're not hurting, but they're also going to ask for a pretty penny if they're going to be in a Netflix movie.
Well, no, that's what I mean. But that's what it's funny though. Is I think we're starting to see that shift in terms of like the original content that Netflix is producing or optioning to say is Irishman aside, because that was an Oscar ploy. Um, but in terms of like these ones that they're bringing on or making on their own and whatnot, is I think there's this shift where we're seeing more and more of these high profile actors coming in and saying that a Netflix movie is just as good and just as beneficial to them and their career than it is on a big screen. A good example of that is The Old Guard that just came out here a couple weeks ago with Charlize Theron and Nikki Lane. Absolutely fantastic. I absolutely enjoyed The Old Guard. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to watch it yet.
I don't care
Uh,
about it's not anything I'm rushing out to watch.
it's great though. I would certainly say that it's great. This kind of leans into the next a little bit of news that we have as well. But I think Netflix, in terms of especially like the action movies, I think they're definitely starting to show a little bit of a caliber to be able to entice people to have Netflix to enjoy these movies. Six Underground with the Michael Bay movie that it is, Spencer Confidential, The Old Guard, and then like I said, the one that we're going to talk about next.
What is that next piece of news that we're talking about?
That next piece of news is the trailer that dropped here for the movie premiering on Netflix on August 14th called Project Power, starring Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Basically, the premise of the idea is that there is a pill out on the black market or out on the streets that gives people superpowers. And just from the little bit of the trailer when I watched the trailer and whatnot, it popped up. I watched the trailer immediately. Yeah, I'm in. This thing looks fantastic.
Oh, you're going to me.
I
I don't care about this movie. It didn't hook me. I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt is one of my favorite actors working today. I love Jamie Foxx.
hmm
The directing duo, I like some of their work. Some on the other hand, I do not. If you don't know, let's see, Henry Joost and what was the other? Ariel Schulman, directors of Paranormal Activity 3 and 4, Nerve. Um,
I enjoyed Nerve.
Nerve was a movie. Uh, so was Paranormal Activity 4. Paranormal Activity 3 is my favorite of the series, but I don't know if I necessarily, they had stuff they were working with. This seems more of a passion project type of vehicle here with Project Power. This reminds me of what's that Bradley Cooper movie that came out and then got a TV show?
Limitless.
Limitless. It reminds me of that mixed with like superheroes, and I'm I'm kind of, we talked about this last week with the Disney Plus movie that was coming out, the kids superhero thing. It's like
Not Artemis Fowl.
no, the I don't even remember what it was
Oh,
called.
okay.
Yeah,
No, I know the one with
the one with the Pitch Perfect guy.
yeah, the Pitch Perfect guy, Skylar Austin or
Yes,
whatever.
that looked terrible, and this kind of reminded me of an adult version of that.
No, this looked way better than that Disney movie.
Well,
Because
a
because
little better.
because
But
you are correct. After I had an opportunity to watch that trailer, it straight up looks like it's for the Disney
oh,
Channel.
the trailer's terrible. Yeah, this it doesn't excite me at all. Maybe another trailer or some good reviews will excite me, but I'm just not into it. We've got the superhero stuff already with the Marvel and the DC. I don't know if I need a different take on that. Who knows how this will turn out, but I'm just not into it.
Well, speaking of Netflix and not into it and whatnot, The
There's a
old guard.
couple.
The old guard's got an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I've
So
heard
people are
good
enjoying it.
I've heard good things, but it's just one I haven't.
I
I'm
know.
not going to rush out to watch.
I know. I just wanted to give you crap
But let's talk about some other Netflix movies that are
because why not?
not in my wheelhouse either.
Yeah, I know. It's funny as I was looking at this list, I was like, I've seen 2 of these. And basically, Netflix released the top 10 most viewed films. And looking at this list has to tell me that this is relatively current. Nothing that is like from, I think the oldest thing in here was like maybe late 2018. But starting from the bottom and working my way up to the top is they indicated The Perfect Date with 48 million, The Platform at 56 million viewed, The Wrong Missy at 59, Triple Frontier at 63, The Irishman at 64, which baffles me that The Irishman and Triple Frontier, Ben Affleck led Triple Frontier, were only a million apart from each other. Murder Mystery at 73, Six Underground at 83 million, Spencer Confidential at 85, Bird Box at 89 million views, and Extraction at 99 million views. I mean, these are for some very interesting numbers, and obviously in a household, easy repeat of this watching the same movie over and over again is very easy and whatnot. But like the one of the reasons why I look at this, I'm like, that there's a skew to this list because, well, Murder Mystery is on there, The Wrong Missy is on there. Like, there's movies on here that I'm like, there's probably other better movies that have probably have hit some of these numbers that are not on this list.
Well, Six Underground is on this list too. I mean, we're not talking. So is Bird Box. Bird Box is not a good movie.
No, but I did watch Six Underground twice myself.
You're 2 out of that 83 million that did watch it. Then, looking at this list, I'm not really surprised by any of these numbers. Really, I think The Irishman is a little surprising to me because we also have it's right in between the 2 Sandler, Happy Madison movies on this list that I'm surprised that many people watched, The Irishman. Maybe it was because it was free and it was an Oscar-y movie. And,
right.
It came out around Christmas, so everybody was kind of off then.
And maybe we got less views of The Irishman because they could watch Murder Mystery twice in the time it takes them to watch The Irishman.
I blame Sandler for Scorsese not winning an Oscar last year. Extraction is no surprise that it's number 1. Hemsworth has him teaming up with the Russos again. Right on I believe this would be his first movie then since Endgame, if I'm not mistaken. I would assume so. So that makes sense. Bird Box was a big just cultural phenomenon. Everybody watched that movie. Spencer Confidential, you had the Mark Wahlberg being in a Netflix movie. That's a big deal. And Michael Bay and Ryan Reynolds teaming up. Like, none of these really surprised me that they're on here. And
no, but some of the ones, like you say, like Extraction and Six Underground and, Spencer Confidential, this is where I'm talking about that weird little shift that we're starting to see with the Netflix films. Like, this came out, I think that if this was out in a couple months, maybe a little bit more, The Old Guard would be on this list. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I can see this trend continuing with their bigger, higher profile movies will continuously get over the hump. I'm expecting over 100 million views for the next couple big Netflix movies.
Oh yeah,
and Extraction's only been out 2 months, something like that. It hasn't been very long, and people were looking for movies to watch at home. I don't know if I see that trend changing a whole lot, even when theaters do open. I see streaming continue to go strong. And the only one I'm kind of surprised on this list is at the number 9, The Platform, which came out earlier this year. I think a couple of things. It hits really hard on social media. People were talking about the movie, and it came out like right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and everybody being at home right when this movie came out. So I think that was, this and Tiger King were like the 2 things everybody was talking about then. So
right.
I'm sure Tiger King is on. This is just for movies. I'm sure Tiger King is probably on their most watched series ever.
Oh, it has to be. It definitely has to be.
So yeah, this is cool that we get to see these numbers and kind of figure out what people have been watching on Netflix.
I do want to point out real quick here. Extraction came out in April, late April, April 24th. So a matter of just a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, well, Chris Hemsworth did do Jane Silent Bob reboot, but that's just a little cameo. But you did miss one since Avengers.
What was he in?
Men in Black International.
Oh, that was a movie that no one remembers.
Obviously, I didn't remember it until I looked it up, and you didn't either.
It
So
came out
yes.
after Avengers, really?
Yeah. That's how it's listed over here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
because that's when we were re-teaming up with him and Tessa Thompson.
Yeah, that was a movie.
That was a movie. All right. So moving on. I got to get back to my notes. There we go.
All right. Should we go
So-
to the coming soon then?
Yeah, let's get it on because these news has been really long.
Yeah, we'll run through these quick. There isn't a whole lot of big releases here. Let's start off. We'll just quickly run through these. The first stuff that we got here is The Rental, which hits VOD in select theaters July 24th, and one of those theaters is Sioux Falls' own West Mall 7. So we will be able to see this movie in theaters. It is the directorial debut of Dave Franco.
I was like, James has already directed a couple of things.
He's directed a couple. He's even directed Dave in one of them at least. So this is his directorial debut. He's bringing his wife, girlfriend, lady friend, I don't know, Allison Brie along,
like
and Hollywood hunk Dan Stevens along for this one. It is a horror thriller movie about two couples who rent a vacation home for a weekend getaway until they realize that they are being spied on.
Dun dun dun.
This movie looks really good. There's a final shot in the trailer that I'm like, whoa, Dave Franco has an eye. He has an eye for something here. I'm excited to see what he can do with this.
Dave Franco is one of those ones where I think that he tends to get overshadowed by his brother. And I do think that there is some talent there, and I just don't think that he's had the prime opportunity. I mean, there's been stuff like you said, like his work in The Disaster Artist, for example, and he's one of the things that I enjoyed about the Now You See Me films. He's one of the things that, even though you are not as much of a fan, he's one of the things I enjoyed about Nerve, that sort of thing. I think he's got the ability there. I think it's probably born into the DNA of that family. It's just a matter of finding him the vehicle to be able to show that I can direct too, like my brother.
Yeah, I do want to check this out in the theater. This seems like a fun theater watch for this one. So I'm excited that we're getting it in theaters, but it is also hitting VOD same day, July 24th.
What if we would get to that point where we have the Francos being like the Scotts with the Ridley and Tony Scott kind of stuff, the duo brothers that make different kinds of films? I'd be interested to see how that would work.
I want to see Dave Franco direct James in a movie this time.
I'd be okay with that.
I think that'd be interesting.
What's the next one there, sir?
Next one we got up here is called The Radioactive. Is an Amazon Prime original movie, July 24th. Rosamund Pike plays famed chemist Marie Curie, who won a Nobel Prize for her discoveries on radioactivity, and then ultimately she died, spoiler alert, from radiation exposure. So
if you're saying spoiler alert, they never watched The Big Bang Theory.
Also stars Sam Riley and Anya Taylor-Joy. This movie, I watched the trailer right before we started recording. I can see where this is going to be this is not something I'm going to rush out to watch. Maybe I could see maybe people are going to be. I can already see what the headlines is for this. Rosamund Pike is great in the movie, and I think that's what people will be talking about. She looks really good in the trailer, but it's not something I'm really rushing out to watch.
Right. It's a movie about Madame Curie. So
yeah.
Your historians and your people who like that kind of stuff and whatnot. But you and me are like, I'll see it if I see it.
Yeah, there's definitely an audience for that movie. That is for sure. There is also an audience for this movie too. This is The Kissing Booth 2, which is a sequel to the Netflix film from a few years ago, starring Joey King. This hits Netflix July 24th. So this is about Joey King's character is now a senior with her boyfriend is at Harvard, and their long distance relationship doesn't go well. Also, more guys and more kissing?
Yeah, hard pass.
Yeah, I think I caught like 10 minutes of this while Kayla was watching it one day, and it was a movie. There is
Like,
definitely, this is
like
one of those, so Netflix has a certain, they like to hit certain subgenres of film goers, and this is definitely one of the teen rom-com, and they hit it hard, especially with Joey King in a lot of them.
mhm.
There's definitely an audience for it, and I could see The Kissing Booth 2 ending up in their top 10 most watched movies on Netflix.
We might not necessarily see it because it's not in our little thing, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's certain places where Netflix likes to play, and I think you're absolutely correct. There is that teen era, everything that they want to be able to hit hard because those are the people that are going to be paying the bills in 10 years. And yeah, this is for them. This movie isn't for someone like us.
Speaking of another movie that is for someone that is not like us, Animal Crackers, which is a Netflix animated feature film, comes out July 24th. This movie has been sitting on the shelf, I guess, since 2017. It stars John Krasinski and his wife, Emily Blunt, and they voice John Krasinski voices a man who inherits a rundown circus from his uncle and discovers a box of animal crackers that can magically turn humans into animals. Also
Yeah, this
stars Danny DeVito as the ringleader. I think he's typecasting himself. What a cast in this. Harvey Fierstein, Wallace Shawn, Patrick Warburton, Gilbert Gottfried, Raven Simone, Ian McKellen, and Sylvester Stallone, what a weird cast. That sort of excites me, but then I watched the trailer and it did not.
the trailer just I don't know what to make of that trailer. It looks
There's a reason the movie's been sitting on the shelf for. There's a reason that the movie's been sitting on the shelf for 3 years now.
maybe. And this is one of those ones where they get these particular actors and everything like that, and it is straight up just we were able to secure Stallone for a day's worth of work. We paid him 50 G's or something like that, and that way we put Stallone's name on here. That all these different people. This just looks like one of those straight to DVD kids movies that we would check out at the rental store.
I think it's going to hit Netflix, maybe excite the kids and distract them for an hour and a half and be forgotten after that.
You are correct.
All right, let's go to the last movie that we got on our coming soon featured here. We have I don't even know how to pronounce this. Empedagore, I believe is how you would pronounce it. It is a Shudder original film, July 23rd, from the directors of Satan's Slaves, which is a great little film that came out a few years ago. A woman learns that she is the key to a village's curse, and that said village must kill her to end the curse. Shudder coming in hot once again, releasing movies like every weekend. I'm really digging that Shudder is coming out with stuff every single weekend to add to their service.
How do you even have a chance to watch anything else when your head is buried in Shudder?
I don't know how I do. I did check out one of the Shudder movies we talked about a few weeks ago, The Beach House. It was pretty good, fun watch. Good. This looks good. I'm excited for the to see the team behind Satan's Slaves doing a movie like this again. I watched the trailer. It fits the tone of that movie as well. So this seems, if you liked that movie from a few years ago, this seems right up that same alley.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. So that is all we have for Coming Soon this week. You can check out our full Coming Soon article on backlot605.com for a full list of everything coming soon, including what we talked about today and all the older releases that are hitting streaming services, as well as some of the local theaters and what they are playing. But Brian, let's take a little break, go shoot off some fireworks maybe, and come back and talk about Born on the 4th of July.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to to get ourselves a treat.
All right, we are back on the Backlot 605 podcast. I myself, Casey, am joined, of course, by Brian. He did not run away from this yet. Brian, let's jump into this. We are talking about the 1989 biographical war drama Born on the 4th of July, written and directed by Oliver Stone, also co-written by author Ron Kovic, who this story is based on, as Tom Cruise plays Kovic, who is a Vietnam War veteran who is paralyzed in action and comes back and sees how the country has been divided between anti-war and pro-human rights political activists during this time. So let's jump into the movie Born on the 4th of July. Brian, this is the first time both of us had the chance to watch this movie.
Well, I should say is it's not that I have never had an opportunity before. I just, for whatever reason, never got around to it. This movie came out,
So this was the first time you watched it?
Yes, this is the first time I've watched it. But when this movie came out, I was not at the age where I should have been watching movies like this. So, I
was not born yet.
You weren't even here yet. I was definitely watching this film with an idea and expectation as an adult, and between the aspects of history and just modern times and stuff we're dealing with today, it was a very interesting movie to watch now.
Yeah, like I said, this is the first time watching it. It has always been on my watch list. I'm a fan of Oliver Stone movies. Of course, Tom Cruise is one of the greatest movie stars of all time. I knew it was part of his Vietnam War movies, and I knew nothing else about it going in, which was exciting to jump in that way. So after doing a little research on it and hearing about Ron Kovic's story and reading a little bit about his biography and stuff, this is quite a movie to talk about, because like you said, watching this movie here in 2020, what are we, 30 years removed, 31 years removed from when this movie came out, and it's still as important and as I don't even know what the word I'm trying to think of is. It's such an important film even then that it is now. You look at the political divide during the Vietnam War, and even when this movie came out in 1989, we're still feeling that today, but in a different light, but very similar. We still feel the country is divided watching it this time. And let's jump into the story though a little bit here. So we do follow Ron Kovic, who is born. He's born on the 4th of July. The movie starts at this parade, and for the first 20 minutes of this movie, we're following Tom Cruise's character Ron Kovic growing up in the perfect America, the 1950s America, where it's the white picket fences. They're all listening to Elvis Presley. They're getting hamburgers and malts at the malt shop. They're going to prom, doing everything Americana. And I want to get your thoughts on this. How did you feel that was represented here by Oliver Stone? Because I've heard some criticisms of this that I don't agree with, but I want to hear your thoughts on this opening segment of the movie before he ends up going to war.
I myself, the only thing I think I had a little bit of a problem with is that Keira Sedgwick looked too old to be in high school. But outside of that, I mean, I also didn't grow up during this time, and those that are maybe having a little bit of the skew in the thought are probably the ones that did grow up through the 50s and the 60s and whatnot. I didn't seem to have a problem with it. I think it did a good job of kind of trying to set up who Ron Kovic was, because I think that without even that first 20 minutes of a 2-hour film, it would have given you less definition to him. Like that prehistory of him before going to war, I think held a lot to explain what kind of character he was going to war and the kind of character he becomes after war.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this opening because it felt like it felt like Oliver Stone was setting up the character perfectly, setting it up in perfect, like what you think of definitive America. I do think of like the 50s, because you're in the time, you're post World War II. You're before Vietnam. We're in a good place, pretty much on all cylinders in this country. And the way he presents it in this movie is so. It is especially the way he shoots this. It feels like a dream. You don't feel like you're in reality. And for these characters, it does feel like they're in a utopia. Nothing can go wrong. Um, Everything's going right for them. They're about to enter the Vietnam War. We're going to stop communism. This is how we do it. That, like, no question about it. Our parents served in WW2, so we're going to go do the same because that's the American way. And if you don't go fight for your country, you're a commie. And that's what Stone is trying to portray in this opening part is that idealistic America and what people during that time thought of as idealistic America, and even looking at how these and I feel like I know people like this, especially Ron at the beginning of this movie, where they hear everything their parents and teachers are telling them, and they take it as fact. They never try to think
Right.
outside the box at all. They're always just following orders, much like a soldier in war. And I just love how Stone portrays that in this opening. It is, and that was one of the criticisms I found, was people are like, well, he's just idealizing America, and it wasn't really like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what he's trying to portray in the movie. It's a movie, we're not trying to. He's trying to tell fact within a fictional realm that is cinema.
Wait,
Not telling it. That's how
that's
movies
supposed to work?
Yeah, that's how movies work. He's not
There's
creating
artistic license isn't a thing?
Yeah, I guess not. But I really enjoyed that. And then when we get to him in war is where I think Stone it's almost a meta take on what he's done before, because the war stuff is not very long in this movie. It's maybe 15 minutes of crews in action in Vietnam. If that, I don't think it's even that. It might not even be that long. It's not very long.
No, it's not long at all. But I mean, if you look at this movie on a whole, it's about a man who struggles with everything, because of Vietnam. But it's not like it's Platoon. It's not like it's Apocalypse Now and stuff like that. It's not per se about the war. It's about the man. So I don't take away that we don't have an hour's worth of war movie. It's not Saving Private Ryan, that sort of thing. So it's about one guy. So the fact that the war section of this film is kind of abbreviated, I think works for it. You don't need to see all the garbage.
I 100% agree. And that's where I feel it's a little meta on Stone, where he's like, I already did that movie. If you want to watch the war stuff, go watch my movie before this, Platoon. Go watch that. That's not the story I'm telling this time. That's what it feels like. Like, he feels like you have to have something set in the war, and it feels like he's going straight to the end of this guy's tenure in the war. He's jumping right to before he gets paralyzed in this movie. He's jumping right to that. He's not building up towards it. It just jumps to that. And it feels like, go watch Platoon if you want to watch that movie. Now I'm telling this story right here, right now.
Yep. I would have to completely agree with that.
And what he does here, like, what you get from Platoon for 2 hours, you get here in 10 minutes, and it's still just as heartbreaking and disturbing every time. They get orders to take on this Vietnamese village, and I guess it was, from what I understand from the movie, and it's not fully explained, is they were kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time and had bad intel or whatever it may be, but they ended up firing on this village, and it was innocent civilians, kids, wives, mothers, grandmothers. There was no soldiers there. Babies, yeah. And the stuff that Stone does in this movie with that is really, really powerful stuff, especially the baby's cry that just lingers in this scene.
Well,
It's
and that's
haunting.
and that's the other thing, as I would say about this, is even though we only get a portrayal of the actual war in Vietnam for, like you said, 15, 20 minutes, it still resonates through the rest of the film. We have a little bit of an occasional flashback per se, the baby crying kind of thing, where, like you said, it literally rings in his ears kind of thing. We have references back to the war and back to those specific events, but they're used in that nice little container to be able to pick from as we need to sprinkle that throughout the rest of the story, the rest of his life.
Yeah, and it's stuff that even though it's only 10, even this is, a day in his life, but it rings true for him forever. Same thing goes with this movie. We only get 10 minutes of this in the movie, but you're haunted by it through the rest of the runtime.
Yep.
And one of my favorite scenes in this movie is following this. I mean, not favorite, but like one of the most impactful scenes that I get out of this movie is when they are then ambushed. Ron Kovic, Tom Cruise's character, then shoots one of his own that he's leading. He mistakes him for being an enemy soldier. It's set behind a sunset, so he can't really see who's running at him. He fires, mistakenly kills one of his own soldiers, and then when he goes and tells his commanding officer what happened and says, I think I killed him, and his commanding officer says, no, you didn't. Even if pretty much if you think you did, you didn't. And that's a scary thing to think about, that this stuff happens. There's a commanding officer that doesn't want him to deal with what he actually did, killing one of his own, and the commanding officer says, no, forget about it, that didn't happen, back to where you were, we're going to keep fighting. And that's a scary thing to think about.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things that from like, and you figure the Vietnam, we're talking about a different kind of time and whatnot and everything. Maybe, we would see something different nowadays and whatnot, but like you said, he couldn't see everything like that. Maybe his commanding officer is more or less trying to push it. Not necessarily that he doesn't want to deal with the baggage that's coming along with this as a commanding officer, but other than, like, he makes reference in that particular scene, a lot of crap was going on. A lot of crap was going on. Don't blame yourself, because of what happened and whatnot. So I think it's more of what you're saying, is that he just wanted to sweep it underneath the rug. But part of me is hoping and thinking that his commanding officer is more or less trying to tell him, I understand what's happening, but it's war, and it's not like he did it on purpose.
We want to think it's that way,
We want
but
to
it's
think
it's
that.
it's not that way, and I think that's what Stone is trying to portray in this movie, especially.
Right.
We should touch on this. Oliver Stone, he is a veteran of the Vietnam War, so he knows.
What?
Yeah, he knows it. He knows it better than anyone else. So he is the perfect guy to tell this type of story. And yeah, again, the horrors of war are ever present in this movie. And then when you get to Tom Cruise getting where he does get shot and is paralyzed from the shoulders down, that the scenes in the hospital, man, that's just gut-wrenching stuff.
And that's just it. Is that I think the scenes when they're in the veterans hospital, this also goes to show the lack of funding and everything like that was going on during the Vietnam War. That all these veterans who went to war for us and all these things that they went through and didn't have the facilities to be able to take care of them properly, is whereas I actually enjoy the fact that Oliver Stone put so much emphasis on that respect more than he did the war.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, we know the war happened. We've talked about this war in multiple times. Like you said, I've done Platoon. You want to go talk war? Go watch that. Here's me showing you what happens afterwards.
And it's just as scary as war during that time, to see the stuff that they're going through. And Tom Cruise, and that through this whole movie, Tom Cruise is fantastic in this movie. He's great in this movie, especially during that, though, where he's literally has to emote everything through his face. Like, he has no body movement. He's tied in the bed for most of those scenes, and it's Tom Cruise's face through those. And he's great in this movie. What I like about it is that the casting of Tom Cruise fits where this character starts, and then we get to see a transformation from that, because the character starts as golden boy, all-American wrestler, enters the Marines because that's the right thing to do, and pretty much when he comes as soon as he comes back from war, he's not Tom Cruise anymore. He
No.
is, even as far as his looks go, he never looks like Tom Cruise after that. Like, he has this kind of gross mustache. He's growing out the gross, long, greasy hair.
Oh, his hippie look.
His hippie
Oh my
hair.
goodness.
Oh, it's
His
great.
hippie look.
It's great, and it's nothing
great.
like Tom Cruise.
Right. It's great because it's not. I almost think of it the same lines of like Tropic Thunder. We don't get those very big opportunities to see pretty boy Tom Cruise uglied up.
I mean, Tropic Thunder is like the last time he's ever done that.
And that's what I mean. And that movie was 12 years ago. That was 2008. So it's like,
I miss this Tom Cruise.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is what is it, a year, maybe 2 years or something like that after Rain Man, where that was kind of his big. I'm gonna look it up as we're doing this here.
I'm already here.
88, so a year before that. So that was his real first one out of being Hollywood, playboy Tom Cruise,
Right,
action star, Days of Thunder, Top Gun character. And so, yeah, from Rain Man to this, that's a quite a 1-2 punch, 88 and 89.
I know, to go from Cocktail to Rain Man to Born on the 4th of July. No, you're absolutely correct. To have that kind of bit of a 1-2 punch, especially, you figure that was relatively still really early in his career, to the point where, I'm not, and this is not to say that we're not talking Mission Impossible 7 is going to be a phoned in performance by Tom Cruise, because that man literally will die in making a Mission Impossible film. But this is probably during those early days where he's not making the money like he's making now, and really going all for it.
I feel at this point in his career, he's really trying to prove himself, especially after he's trying to break, because Top Gun before this is his biggest movie. He's really trying to break out of that, where he's the movie star Tom Cruise that he does eventually become. His career starts as, movie star Tom Cruise, Risky Business, Top Gun. Then he goes through this really, really interesting phase in the late 80s till Mission Impossible, pretty much, right in there, to mid 90s. And then after that, it's pretty much I'm Tom Cruise, movie star.
Hey, let's not forget that he was in Interview with the Vampire, and we got Tom Cruise Vampire too.
Well, yeah, we did. He legit is a vampire in this movie. He looks exactly the same in 1989 as he does in 2020.
That's where, I would certainly say is that basically that decade between like the mid 90s to mid 80s is definitely that unique period of Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the best out of those. It's one of my favorites out of there. He's fantastic in this movie.
Well, you're not all about Jerry Maguire?
I like him in Jerry Maguire. Rain Man is definitely, I love Tom Cruise in Rain Man. I think he's fantastic in that movie too.
Rain Man is probably one of my all-time favorites from like that time from Tom Cruise, just because the dynamic that is Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, not to get completely off topic, is beautiful.
All right, let's get back on topic. I think for this movie, the one little criticisms I do begin to have is starting here, because I really, really do like this movie a lot. I think it's a really fantastic movie. I wish we spent more time of him in the Veterans Hospital. I think we could have spent a little more time there and less of what we get a little later on, including
that's literally like a third of the film.
What's that?
The Veterans Hospital.
He's not in it that long. I mean, if we,
I would say like it.
What? It feels like it, yeah. But he's in that. It's, maybe a half hour in this movie, 25 minutes. I would say about a fourth or a fifth of this movie. And I wish we spent more time. I wish we spent half the movie there. I felt like majority of the movie could have been in that, and him struggling and him trying to build his way so he can eventually leave that place. That would have been, I would have liked to just spend more time there. But when he does come home, we do get some interesting stuff. He gets to see what life is like back on U.S. soil and how the country's become divided. How
his buddy Styles went to college and became a successful burger joint owner.
Yeah, he's trying to take on Mr. McDonald's.
And I say Styles because that's the only thing I remember him from, is he played Styles in Teen Wolf. But Yes, I mean to see how it almost feels like he came home to a completely different town. Because then at that point, that's when you're getting into like the social injustices
The
and
hippie movement.
the hippie movement, the fighting, the police brutality that is depicted in this. Like that's
It's
one of
it's
the
it's scary watching it today.
oh, definitely. Like you look at some of the things and think, okay, this stuff really happened, and it's awful to think that those kind of things happened, especially when you're talking about the freedom of speech, the freedom to be able to peacefully protest, and that's not what they got during those times.
During these times,
Yeah.
it's we are going through something very similar, and it's eerie watching a movie from 1989 that portrays events from the late 60s and seeing how 50 years later we're still dealing with the same type of thing. It's
Right.
scary to watch.
Mhm.
I do like that it gives a little dynamic to him and his family where um, one of his younger brothers does not believe in the war, and how this is kind of one of those moments where he realizes that even in his own family, it's not all Americana anymore.
Yep.
His brother's against the war, and Tom Cruise has a great yelling scene. Tom Cruise yelling is always fun. He has a great yelling scene in there. Then we get to, so I want to jump a little bit ahead into this, where he goes, basically he hits rock bottom, becomes an alcoholic. His parents kick him out of his house after he's been back home. Then he makes his way to Mexico. How do you feel about the Mexico stuff?
Willem Dafoe is amazing.
Defoe is great.
Dafoe is great. Um, it was a
When
little.
is he not, though? I mean, that just
You're
goes without saying.
you're not wrong. And that's even him cross-dressing in Boondock Saints, but that's beside the point. Um,
He's good in that movie. I just don't like some of the stuff he says. But that is a podcast for a different day.
that it is. Um, it just goes to show that that particular scene for me was just showing is that you have some of these veterans that feel that even their own country doesn't want to support them after what they have done and or lost, to the point where they basically travel south to be able to have some sort of an semblance of a normal life, even as abnormal as what their lives were in Mexico.
Yeah, this is the weakest point of the movie for me.
I I
Defoe
can get
he's the he's literally
he,
the only saving grace. I think that's why
thank you. You beat me to it.
I think that's why you cast Defoe in this role, is to kind of help build this up a little more. Him reteaming with Oliver Stone from Platoon. I like having Defoe in this role, but we spend too much time here. We could have done with maybe 10 minutes of this. Or I get the point of it, is to show that Tom Cruise, Ron Kovic, this is what his life could become. He could become Willem Dafoe's character if he stays
Right.
down there and doesn't actually get his shit together. Um,
And I think that's what a lot of that was.
But did we need to spend that much time there? Even if that's what happened in the real story of Ron Kovic, we could have. I think we could have figured out a way for him to stay in the U.S. and had a similar Defoe character, an epiphany moment for him. Just even having Tom Cruise in a bar, a veterans bar in the U.S. for one scene, could have done the same thing that 15, 20 minutes of this movie did in Mexico.
All
And
I
that's where
know,
I felt like the hospital stuff could have been longer, and this could have been shorter.
I'm just saying is the Willem the fight on the side of the road after they got kicked out of the cab was definitely worth it.
Oh, it's great. It's great. And I think, I mean, there's ways you could have done that still and cut down some of the other stuff. Like
Yeah.
him like falling in love with like the prostitute. I'm like, what does that add to this movie? The Defoe stuff, his relationship with Willem Dafoe is what is really needed there. We didn't need that little thing going on. It just didn't add anything to his character then. But and again with this whole movie, we see his transition from all-American hero to broken man to then after this political activist, where
Yep.
he is leading the charge against the anti-war message and leading the charge against anti-Vietnam, and how did you? I felt it was a little rushed, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
It was a little bit what? You broke up.
Little rushed.
Maybe a little bit. But I mean, I think all the necessary tools were set forth in front of us to be able to give us the understanding of where he was to get to that point, to the point where we didn't necessarily need to have all of the building blocks that we didn't get. I think there was enough there for us to be able to mentally get to where he got.
Yeah, I even though I felt it's a little rushed, I do feel like it's a very good thing that they did the show don't tell.
Yes.
They show his deterioration and show him, finally realizing like I can't become this schlub like Willem Dafoe's character. I need to become something more and find his purpose. And I really, the more I have thought about it, the more I do like the more slight transition. It feels a little quick at the end that he transitioned so hard, but I feel like we've got doses of it throughout the movie where he is going with Kira Sedgwick's character to different rallies and stuff. So we get enough of it building for the eventual climax of this movie, which again, if you think of a Vietnam War movie, you don't think it's, set in a Republican, rally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I don't like about that scene is something that ties back to the opening of the movie, is where his mom, this is jumping, I guess, way to the end, is that his mom tells him, I had a dream last night of you, Ronnie, giving a speech in front of millions and changing the world, or whatever she says. And it literally flashes back to that. I'm like, do we need the flashback? I mean, there's a pretty poetic line at the beginning of the movie that you should have in the back of your head the whole time. But
so
that feels like something that was added maybe by the studio, where they're like, well, you should probably put that in there.
I'm thinking that at least Studio Stone, whatever the case is you do that scene, but do it differently in the fact that we don't get the flashback. We don't actually get the screen time. But like, say he's coming up to give his speech, and you get to hear Mom's little speech kind of as a voiceover. I think probably would have played better. As he's getting up there to do that, to realize that he's finally understanding what Mom told him 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty poetic moment in this movie, because what she is telling him to do is very different what he ends up doing. And I like that, because at that point when his mom first tells him, you're going to give a great speech like that, they're watching the JFK speech. And it's a very different time in America when they're watching that. And his parents throughout the whole movie have a very different political viewpoint than he does later in the movie.
Right.
And it's a very poetic line that is ultimately flipped on its head, where the speech they're watching is an anti-communist speech, where now he's basically fighting that we were over fighting a war we shouldn't have been in, type of thing. And it's a very different type of speech that he gives at the end. All right. Do you have any other final notes on the movie?
Yes, we had 3 out of the 4 Baldwin brothers in this film in various stages of it.
And I noticed none. I feel proud of that.
How did you not notice the Baldwin brothers?
Because all of them are not Alec.
Not all of them are not Alec. Hold on a quick second here, because I want to pull this back up. Because the part I think it's funny is, oh, come on, stupid.
I like how that's the name you pull up and not Tom Berenger.
Oh, no, I immediately saw Tom Berenger, and I was like, yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, you stupid thing. I know that. The reason why
there's a Stephen Baldwin, there is a William Baldwin.
So
was there another Baldwin?
Yeah, there's Stephen, William, and Daniel. Those are the 3 that are not Alec. But what I find very
they're all in that.
Yeah, there's 4 Baldwins, and
all not Alex are in this movie.
All not Alex are in here. But what I find really interesting, and I don't think that this was planned, but it's almost like the Baldwins take place in the pre, during, and post sections of Ron Kovic's life, because one of them is in the platoon, one of them is one of his friends before he goes to war, and then the oldest Daniel is in the very end of the movie when he is getting ready to do his speech. Like, I just find it really fascinating that these three, particular brothers are in those three different sections of this film.
I did not notice that.
Yeah.
I also didn't notice any of them in it. I guess that's
Well,
you're a Baldwin aficionado, so I guess you would notice that.
what made me even go looking in the first place was the fact that William and Stephen kind of looked the same, and so I was like, wait a minute, oh wait, they're both in here.
Yeah, the only other final note I really have on Born on the 4th of July, and we talked about this a few weeks ago when we talked about The Patriot, John Williams score.
Yeah,
Not planned.
I saw his name pull up here, and I was like, oh, hey, look, there's that independent guy we keep talking about.
Yeah, and the score for this movie is great, too.
Oh, yeah.
I love the score for Born on the 4th. It does remind me of what he will do later on with Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's another great score by John Williams. I mean, he doesn't have a bad score. So yeah, I mean, underrated John Williams score in this movie too. I think it really adds to, him with Stone and Cruise together. That's quite a dynamic, trio of some of the all-time greats.
Oh yeah. John Williams was a fantastic use of the music in this film.
Yes. So, yeah, let's wrap up our conversation here on Born on the 4th of July. What would you give this? Would you give it a recommendation?
Yeah, I would absolutely give it a recommendation. The one thing I always tell people when it comes to Oliver Stone films is that they are usually at some point, there's usually some sort of bias that is in there. He definitely tells his movies the way he wants to tell them. They're not your average everyday. Not everybody's going to like this film because, like you said, there's not enough war, maybe there's not enough this, but he has a way of doing his particular storytelling. He's one of those kind of directors. Go into the movie knowing that Tom Cruise does a magnificent performance. Has a very good, well-round, a very good supporting cast. Those, I mean, like you said, Willem Dafoe and maybe the Mexico stuff maybe wasn't necessary, but having Willem Dafoe in Mexico makes that part at least better because Willem Dafoe knocks his portion out of the park. So I definitely would recommend anybody to at least give this movie a watch and understand what it is that was going on during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I highly recommend this movie too. I mean, you don't need us schmucks on the internet telling you that the Oscar nominations and wins, I think, tell that. This movie was nominated for Best Picture, did not win. Cruise also did get his first nomination from this movie for Best Actor. It did win for Best Director for Oliver Stone, so it did get a win there. Born on the 4th of July. Platoon is my favorite war film ever. And I think this is a very great companion piece to that. So if you watch Platoon before that and then this right after, that's a rough night to sit and watch film. But I think this is a very important film, and one, like we have said multiple times in this podcast, that is a film that is still resonant today. It was telling, when it came out, it was telling a story from 20 years ago, and it was still just as powerful then. Looking at this movie now, 30 years removed from when this movie came out, and 60 years, 50, 60 years from when the movie takes place, it's crazy how little we have actually changed, and yet how far we have come, before this. And, Stone is a director like none other. He tells it how it is and how he sees the world. And I think that is one of the if you're into Stone movies already, Oliver Stone movies already, this is going to be right up your alley if you had not seen it already. And yeah, I highly recommend it. This has been my favorite movie that we've watched so far in this miniseries. That'll probably change next week, but I love this movie, and again, I think down the road, I would want to try doing the Platoon Born on the 4th of July double feature. That's a rough afternoon, but
that is going to be a rough afternoon.
I might have to watch next week's film right after.
So you do a triple feature. You get Apocalypse Now in there as well.
Oh, God. It is going to be like going to Nam.
I can do it. I can make it through this. I can do this.
That would be a rough Sunday afternoon. But yeah, let's wrap this thing up here. That was our spotlight on Born on the 4th of July.
Girl.
It is pretty widely available on streaming services to rent, and it's a movie that's been out on home video for a very, very long time. And go check it out if you had not or have not watched it in a while. But let's jump to our plugs and stuff that we got going on. First of all, if you want to know where you can find this podcast, if you have not been able to find it already, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and on YouTube. And you can find us on backlot605.com for our latest movie news, reviews, articles, and anything else Backlot 605 related.
Yes.
Brian, where can they find us on the socials?
On the socials? Those little things? You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. We try to update you guys as much as we possibly can with what we got going on or things that we think are relevant to what we talk about. Also, we've got our Facebook group that we definitely encourage people to join, talk, communicate. Let's have a good conversation. That is the South Dakota Film Community Group on Facebook. That way people can get in and share whatever you want, that we like to talk about. We got our memes in there. We got our, hey, what's people watching? But, yeah, definitely get in there, get engaged. And it's a good fun time on the Facebook group.
That it is. And one other thing that we should plug here before we talk about what we're doing next week. Coming up on August 30th, 7 p.m., we will be doing our Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone live show where we're ranking the top 20 films of both directors, actors, filmographies. So we announced earlier this week that we will be doing a live, even more live aspect to this show. We will have a live audience, hopefully, if people feel inclined to come out and join us in a fun night of blood, sweat, and baby oil. We will be at Spellbound Magic Shop here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is on the corner of 41st and Marion. Very easy to find. But yes, we were very gracious enough to be allowed to have that space for the evening. So again, August 30th, 7 p.m. at Spellbound Magic Shop. The Arnie and Sly live show. Maximum 20 people will be allowed in, and we will also be separating out the chairs to make it a more comfortable and safe environment for everyone there. But again, August 30th, 7 p.m. We also are still going to be streaming that live to Facebook as well the same night. So
good. So
yes.
Next week, what are we talking about next week as we continue with our America miniseries?
I think we're rounding it out the only way we know how. With Team America, World Police.
I was waiting for you to go. We're rounding out how we know how with marionettes.
With marionette puppets and puppet sex. What we love here. Yes, we're rounding it out with Team America, World Police. Hey, you know what? We rounded out our summer camp miniseries with a very goofy comedy. Let's do the same here. And even better, let's bring the same crew that we had on that show back on this one. So we will be joined. I don't even know if, Brian, you knew this yet. Mr. Charlie Eccles has asked to join this show on Team America.
Yes.
So Mr. Charlie Eccles, Wrestling Voice 1 himself, will be joining us, as well as Derek Vierink, so our reteaming of our Wet Hot American Summer Camp mini-series team. All four of us are going to be back, and we're going to be talking about puppets and puppet sex.
Yes.
What does this podcast become?
That's a magnificent question. I don't know if I want the answer for.
I'm glad we need to have the palate cleanser. For the summer camp one, we needed a palate cleanser again. And so this will be our palate cleanser from, a couple of dramatic films and Red Dawn. But Team America, World Police is next week again with Charlie Eccles, Derek Vierink, and myself and Brian. Brian, do you have any other final thoughts on today's show?
No, other than I was just going to make a comment that if anybody's looking for it to stream, Team America is available on HBO Max if you have that service. So
Sweet.
It's all about the Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. How many times are we going to say that next week's show? I think I'll open it with that and end it with that. So,
heck yeah.
Yeah, so let's wrap up today's show for the Backlot 605 podcast. This has been Brian Menson, Casey Kelderman, and we'll see you next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.